Welcome back to the Boys in Motion podcast. It's great to have everyone here. Today we've got a super exciting episode. It is episode 6, Group Rides 101. We're going to talk about everything you need to know when it comes to riding with other people. This is something that we all enjoy doing. It's so fun to go out on any kind of bike ride with your friends. And so it's super cool that we get to talk about it, break down some of the must knows, the do's and the don'ts, make sure that safety is top of mind. So let's kick things off. What is a group ride and why do cyclists like them?
Love group rides. Group rides are just basically an excuse to ride your bike far to go grab a cup of coffee. Like, realistically, what else do you do?
I think the big advantage of a group ride is that when you're going solo, you're battling everything alone. If there's wind, you're going to be having that headwind the whole time without any help. I think the nice thing about a group ride with cycling is that you can work to take pulls one after another, share the work so that you get a little bit of downtime, you get a little bit of work, and you kind of rotate it around the group. So it kind of makes it a little bit of ebb and flow throughout that session.
For sure. And this is a big difference between cycling and running is like when you're riding in a group, you have an efficiency gain. Whereas running, like yeah, you still get to be with other people, and if you're, going slow enough, you can chat with other people, which of course you can do in cycling as well. But in cycling, you get to draft off other people and you get to kind of like even when you're racing, there's some tactics to that. And even more competitive group rides, you get to compete a little bit and there's some strategy in the little mini peloton in the group ride of like who's pulling how much and that sort of thing, which makes it super dynamic. And it also motivates you because you see, one friend will go out for 2 minutes and pull really hard. Well, then maybe you want to go up to the front and smash it a little bit extra. And that's one thing that really is really nice about a group ride is you can kind of push each other and in turn make your ride a little bit more fun, a little bit more competitive.
And it's less lonely. You're out there for a few hours, you're with friends, you're with people that you usually don't maybe hang around with for that long, so it's fun, safe. You're with someone if you have a mechanical or any sort of issue, so it's also good safety wise.
That's true. And on the safety point, if you are a solo rider alone, it's more dangerous because you are a smaller piece of that road. A driver might not see you as a solo, but if you've got a larger group, if you have a few people, it's more likely that cars will be able to see you. And because you are just more people, cars will generally actually give you more space than when you're a solo. I often find on group rides, there's far less of those, F-150 trucks that are zooming real fast close to you and almost clipping your handlebars.
Another big benefit have found from my experience of the group rides is that if you're alone, if you start suffering, you're suffering alone and there's no one there to shield the wind and that air coming through and hitting your bike. Where if you do it strategically, if you are a weaker rider in the group, in your peloton, you can then just take less pulls or not even take any pulls, just always go to the back so that you get the benefits of the group. And then you can kind of try to recover a little bit, get back in that better place, take in some fluids, take in nutrition, and then hopefully get back to a point where you're able to contribute to the group, which I think is nice to have that option for those times if you're not feeling 100%.
Got to avoid the bonk at all costs. Avoid the bonk, anti-bonk, baby.
Talking about, sharing the work and that sort of thing, often, especially newer riders, will feel the need to contribute equally to that time in the wind and the amount of pressure they're putting out front. Whereas I think one thing that we were always discussing in our most recent BIM annual bike ride, where we were out for 2 days over 300 kilometers, it was about equity in the front. So those that have the power in the legs, those that are feeling good, we want to be equitable to those that are maybe having a more difficult time or don't quite have the fitness on the bike that some others do. And so sharing the load equitably rather than equally is a really great strategy when it comes to drafting and sharing that work up front.
And you also learn when you're in the front, you can't pull too hard, or else you just scuff the whole group. Really, like you pull too hard, you just get everyone. You don't get the benefits of the draft. You get everyone just pushing hard anyways, and then everyone's in this tough spot. So you gotta kind of balance that teeter totter of don't go too hard. You're feeling good, but not too good. Go with the flow.
Guilty.
I guess
Same.
what is, if you, for those of us that don't have power on our bikes, what is a good way to try to monitor that on the bike? Since speed is not necessarily a good indicator because there's so many things that will affect your speed.
If you got no tech, can you talk? Can you chat to the person in front of you? I think that's a good little sign. Hey, am I huffing and puffing? Or can I be like, oh, hey, how's it going? Good morning, kind of thing. This is a nice day. What a pristine day. I think that's a good way to say, hey, I'm working too hard or not hard enough.
So when in doubt, do the good morning check. Just give them a good morning, and then you're good to go.
Exactly.
I love it.
Exactly.
Great tip.
The other thing that I look for is if I'm pulling out front, I want to make sure that I'm not losing anybody out the back, but people aren't just coasting and I'm not hearing people's rear hubs like tickering, because that means that they're not pulling at all and they might even be using the brakes. That's the worst thing. And this is kind of a more advanced insight when it comes to how to pull in a peloton. If you're leading in a peloton, you actually want to take pressure off relative to how you were pushing on the flat. You actually want to decrease your speed and perceived effort because the drafting effect decreases when you're going uphill. This is the exact opposite when you're going downhill. And this is something that most people don't really understand when they start cycling in a group, is when you're going downhill, that's when you should be pushing hardest if you're leading a group and you're taking the wind at the front, because the last thing you want are the people around you either having to come out into the road to catch wind to slow down or stamping on their brakes. And so I saw myself on flats during the most recent group ride we were on. On flats, I'm pushing, let's say, 200, 250 watts. But on a downhill, I can go to 300, 350, and people are still potentially coasting behind me, and that's the thing you want to avoid. So smashing the downhill and sagging the climbs a little bit.
Yeah, you taught me that, and it was a game changer. Even today, I went on a group ride with a few friends, and I would just smash the downhill. It was nice and speedy, uphills, nice and easy, and it was no problemo. It was nice.
So let's talk about, we'll take a step back to more of the safety side of things when it comes to riding in group rides. So what are some of those tips that you would have to a newcomer to a group ride who maybe hasn't been in a group ride before, but they definitely know how to cycle and they've been out on rides alone?
I think the biggest one, having done my first group ride just last year, that was very different than when being alone, is just the fact that you are in close proximity to a bunch of other riders, and because you are so close, not able to make quick changes to what you're doing. So consistency in your pedal stroke, and not, first of all, no quick braking, because if you quick brake, the person behind you is definitely going to be hitting you. So you just want to be doing whatever you're doing, stay doing it and keep consistent with it so that you as a group can move consistently throughout the road.
Yeah, I like that. Another thing that I always try to make sure I'm not the one that is going to be the one that messes stuff up for the whole group. So that means normal bike maintenance. Hey, check, is your seat fine? It just basic stuff. Your chain, is it lubed? The last thing you want is you're the person that everyone's waiting on in the group, because I've been there, done that. You don't want to do that again. Have a repair kit. Kind of, I like to kind of picture myself as self-sustain. You're still in a group, but you have the support of the group, but you can fix your own tire. You have your multi-tool with you. Obviously, people can help with some of those items, but make sure your bike is functioning also, so that way nobody's waiting on you for stuff, or you got a loose bolt somewhere. So just be prepared before the ride is even a good way to start.
Yeah, that's great. And what about safety in certain conditions? Like, of course, a hot day you need to hydrate more, but that's true no matter whether you're in a group or alone. But how does, rain potentially affect a group ride?
Rain, the worst thing I hate about rain on a group ride is you can't stay as close, so there's less draft effect. It's also dangerous because of the water and the slipperiness, but you can't stay close because of the tail on the back of the person's wheel, so you get stuff in your face. You can't really see properly, so you kind of got to leave more space. You got to slow down a little bit, really look at your footing on the road. You don't want to start hydroplaning in puddles, especially if you're on the shoulder, and you kind of want a sturdy base. No quick turns, or like Andrew was saying, keep everything consistent, or else in rain it's not fun.
Yeah, so just kind of like a car, you maybe adjust your speed a little bit based on the conditions, keep a little bit more distance. You probably want to communicate just a little bit more with turns, anything on the ground or anything like that, just because, your tires are a little bit more slick. You're not able to brake as quick if anything happens. So just reducing everything just a little bit and give yourself a little bit more affordances when it comes to having to stop or anything like that. So we've been talking about riding in a peloton. And on our last group ride, we tried a few different formations. So let's just talk about what the different type of formations are and when you might want to use the different ones based on different conditions.
I'm gonna give the floor to Brian because he's the group ride formation commish. So you start us off, Brian, with the commissioner.
So, and what we're going to call these formations are essentially pace lines. So, basically, when you're cycling in a large group, kind of more than two people, let's say, you end up creating pace lines. And the whole reason for a pace line is, of course, sharing and rotating through the work of breaking the wind at the front. So you can do a straight or single pace line, which is kind of the most simple to explain, which is you have a number of riders all in a single line, and the rider out front will generally flick an elbow and exit to either the right or the left, generally the left. But if the wind is really bad, maybe you'll go to the other side. But I would say 99% of the time, you're going out to the left-hand side, and that rider who was in the front falls to the back, and it rotates through like that. You also have a double pace line where you have two lines of riders, and the riders at the front will both fall back at the same time, sort of like a single pace line, but there's two riders. And those riders can either both fall back on the same side, or what's generally done is they'll fall back. The left person heads to the left, the right person heads to the right, and that's very coordinated. Now, you have kind of the circular pattern of Paceline, which to me is really, really fun, but it's a little bit more difficult to coordinate. And basically, the circular Paceline means that you always on the right or the left, generally again, you're riding up the right hand side and circling around the left hand side. But unlike the single pace line, here you're in a consistent circle pattern. So you're never holding the front for a long time. The moment you pass the wheel of the rider that you're passing, let's say you're on the right and the rider that's going drifting to the back is on the left hand side. The moment you pass that wheel on the left hand side, you switch over to the left hand side, and then you wait till you're at the back of the chain and you immediately circulate around again. The last thing that I would talk about is kind of when there's a significant crosswind. And this, you again are sort of forming one of these pace lines we've already talked about, but instead of being straight as an arrow, you actually tuck into the protected side of the rider out in front of you. So let's say the wind is coming from your right, you will end up sitting on the back left of the rider in front of you so that you have some protection from the wind. Because again, the whole reason you're riding in these formations is to be more efficient and reduce your aerodynamic drag by blocking the wind in front through the rider in front of you.
And what are some of the, like, communication tips that you could use while you're in these formations? Like, I know you said that the flick, you gave me some of those flicks before, but is there any other, like, verbal? I know sometimes with the wind and the chaos of a group ride, sometimes it's hard verbally, but what do you think would be the best way to communicate that?
Look, honestly, we could spend a long time talking about communications while cycling, not limited to hand signals and also speaking to one another. But what I would say, and let's break this down, maybe I can try to do this in like 60 seconds. So, what you want to signal with your hand, you want to signal your direction. So, if you're going left, right, or you can also just point with your right hand if you're going right. You want to signal if you're going straight through an intersection, which you would do through kind of like flicking your hand forward. And you want to signal that you're stopping. And you do that by pushing one of your either hand down so that the riders behind you can see that you've dropped a hand and you're slowing. Anytime you make a hand signal, you also want to speak and you really want to yell that hand signal because cycling is loud. And if you're in a group of more than like 3 people, it's difficult to hear somebody that far away while you're riding. So that's kind of directionally what you want to be doing. Andrew, what do you want to be doing when there's something in the road that you want to avoid?
So same kind of idea. You want to use your hands and a verbal communication on what is approaching. So things that you might be wanting people behind you to be aware of is change in road conditions. Say there's gravel, sand on the road. You the general symbol sign is to wave your hand down by where it is to indicate that there is changes in the road conditions, but also verbally saying gravel, sand, something like that. Another one
Bumps.
is Another one is bumps or holes, and just to point where that hazard is. And these changes in road conditions are super important when you're drafting. Since you're so close, they won't people won't be able to see them until they are right at their front wheel. So giving them a chance to react if they need to move left, move right is super important. So I'd say those are the two main ones. There are other hand signals for road conditions, but one point that I definitely want to hammer home is that as you're going on these group rides, if it's a new group or new people are in the group, don't assume that people know the words or the hand signals for these different direction changes or road conditions. Have that conversation before of what everything means and when to do things, just so everyone's on the same page. I know on our most recent ride, we were going down a hill, and as Brian mentioned, for pushing down a hill is super important. Jacob and I were up the front, and Brian was all the way at the back. So with the wind, it's hard to hear. And at the front, all we could hear was no, 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 no. So then we start slowing down, but really he was saying go, 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 go. So just have that conversation beforehand, so you don't have that miscommunication when we're supposed to be bombing down that hill.
I was right in front of him and I still heard no, no, no. I was like, what the heck is going on?
And this is the thing, and it's proper to communicate, of course, but when something like that didn't work, and we talked about it immediately after because we all sat up and we're like, oh, what the heck? And immediately we were like, okay, we can't understand that no is go or vice versa, so we ended up using aller as like to add pressure after that. And so communicating and being flexible and being able to just adjust is also important for these group rides. But Andrew, I just want to, yeah, your point about communicating before the start of the ride, 100%. That is such great advice.
And just one more tip on that, as if you in the front of the peloton are going to make a decision, for example, let's say you're crossing a busy road. It's and there's cars coming and you have the tiniest little gap and you're like, "Oh, I'm a single rider. I can get across, of course." And you just blast across that road. That's probably not a good idea when you're group riding. Communicate what you're doing, say I'm crossing, let make sure they're on the same page and move as a group.
What was it? Hurry, hurry.
Yeah,
After
if
he
you need
crossed.
exactly. If you need to say hurry as a call, you're in the wrong, I would say. But that's a good thing is like intersections. So if you're approaching a stop, you always want to identify what that stop sign is. So say it's a four-way, say it's a two-way, so that the riders behind know exactly what you're approaching because sometimes they can't see through the peloton of riders in front of them. So talk about what it is. And then if you're one of those leading riders and you're edging into the intersection, you want to communicate that it's clear so that the riders behind understand that okay we're going to go through at this point. And what I like to do is of course left right check, and I'm going to say good good on both directions as a mental note even to myself to make sure that I'm checking both directions just to be extra safe, because one clear sometimes isn't enough, especially if one person just looks one way and says clear. You could put people at risk or yourself at risk.
And what I liked too on our ride, we were, 7, 8 people, but we all would go through and say clear for the guy behind. So like, just communication is good, even if it's over communication. I think it's good to not miss anything.
For sure. The one thing that I would say is what you don't want to do is over communicate on bumps and holes in the road sometimes,
What do you mean?
because oftentimes it becomes the story of the boy who cried wolf, right? If you are calling out every little bump that like you could just ride over and isn't going to affect your bike, then if you're calling bump for every little thing in the road when there's actually something in the road, we're going to be desensitized in the back. And I know Adam pointed that out once and I did agree with him, and I knew I had to mention that here.
I was so desensitized by the end of it. I was like, this is not bumps.
I remember shaking my head sometimes when there was a bump call and I'd roll over and there was no change to the road conditions. I was like, oh, what the heck? One of these times I'm going to pop my tire because I don't even take avoidant action anymore.
SMH, shake my head, maybe.
I think this may be a good segue of let's just chat about ride etiquette in general. Brian, you gave your don't. Maybe let's go around, each give a don't, a do, and a very important do and don't. I'm gonna start with my don't, and I see videos online, and I've seen it on the road where cyclists, where there's traffic and cars, and they'll signal quick with their hand that they're merging in. Don't look and just assume that the car is going to yield to them. You are flowing with traffic. If you are on a busy road, make sure you check, make sure you give yourself enough time, and make sure that there's acknowledgement from the driver that they're letting you merge in. And if not, you need to wait. You are a part of traffic, so don't just assume drivers are going to let you in.
Mine is off of personal experience. Do not pass someone in the shoulder on the right, especially if it's a stranger. I've gotten yelled at passing on the right in the shoulder. Yeah, you should always be passing on the left. Check for traffic. Make sure it's clear on your left. You pass. You pretend you're a car. You're not going to be passing someone in the slow lane. So you always go to the left, except for if you're racing. You actually usually should pass on the right when you're racing. But on the road, please pass on your left. I got in trouble for that once. It was nice.
Actually, it was funny. The guy that I bought my bike off of secondhand, I saw him like on a closed roadway and I passed on his right. There, like the whole road was closed. It was two lanes of traffic and I passed on his right. And that was his first comment to me. Even though he was kind of in the middle of both lanes, he said, "Hey, just make sure in the future you're always passing on the left." So it's definitely,
So
yeah,
that was good.
improved.
All right, Brian. So now, what do you have for us for our do for riding etiquette?
So my do is going to be about preparation and what you bring on the ride. Do prepare and equip yourself like it's a solo ride. So that means making sure you have the equipment to maintenance and change a tire. It means you're bringing all of your own food. It means you have your own communication device, a little bit of money, and then finally enough hydration for yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. For my do is do communicate to the group how you are feeling and at different checkpoints throughout the ride. If you're struggling, if you're hurting, communicate that so that as a peloton, as a group, you can make adjustments. People can take more pulls, you can sit back. But if you don't communicate that, the group won't know and it will hurt more for you. And people might also be more confused about if you're falling back, and that can be frustrating for the group. So do communicate how you're feeling throughout the ride because we're all just here to have a good time.
My do, push the downhills, baby. You got to push those downhills. But also, I learned this from Brian, and I utilized it on my ride this today. Ask people how much food they've had. Kind of check in with people. Hey, have you eaten? Have you drank? Because sometimes you forget. It's nice. It's maybe not as warm out. You feel the wind. It's not that hot. Hey, did you eat your food yet? And sometimes people are like, oh no, I haven't taken any nutrition in 2 hours. Well, obviously you're going to bonk. You're going to need an emergency donut. So you got to eat your food, drink your water, drink your electrolytes. Just check in with those people.
Yeah, that's great advice. Always check in with your group. You're there to put in the work together. So you're only as strong as that weakest person in the group. So if you're making sure you're checking in, making sure that everyone's fueled, hydrated, feeling good, everyone's going to have a better time. So I think that kind of wraps up our main points on Group Riding 101. And I think now we're going to jump into the chat time and chat about our most recent group ride, the annual BIM ride, and just some of our experiences on that ride and just some interesting stories that happened along the way.
Yeah, so I thought it was phenomenal. What I and we've touched on some of these points, but what I really enjoyed was the path that we traveled, making sure that the route was well planned so that everybody can download that to their bike computers. Everybody has a sense of where we're going, what we're doing. I think that's a key for any group ride, but that was really great for the Boys in Motion annual ride. And I'm excited to see kind of what we like. We'll end up talking to the group that rode this past year and maybe some adjustments to the route, but I could do something similar next year and be very content with it.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking a little longer. We always got to push the limit. Little longer wouldn't be too bad, but yeah, no, that was amazing. I think another good thing was the stops. We kind of you did a good job, Brian, at planning out the stops, okay, and communicating that, every whatever 25, 30, 40K we're stopping for water, we're stopping for food. So kind of that gave you the also the mental checkpoint of, hey, I only have 45 minutes left. We're going to stop, get some water, get off the pedals for 10 minutes and then keep going. So that was, I think, also good at breaking it up in the day. Like instead of saying, hey, I have 180, you just chunk it down. Hey, you got 30K to go, onto the next one.
Absolutely. Yeah, the stops, being able to get that fuel, hydration, have lots of water stops, and even just a moment to kind of, if there was any sections where there was some people in the group that, as we were talking about, got a little trigger happy with the pace and pushing it up the front, and maybe consistency. It's a do as we say, not as we do situation with that one sometimes.
Putting people out here or
Oh,
what?
I'm looking right at you, Tyler. As we were coming into our first breakfast stop, you were blasting down that road, and I remember sitting behind you and looking at my speedometer, and I was like, "Oh yeah, we're going quick." And then you pull off. Finally, I was just counting down the seconds until you came off, and I was like, "Okay, time to manage this pace a little bit more because I am cooked." Oh, it was good. It was good.
Yeah, that was fun. So this actually raises a really good point. What I think we should do is for some of those, well, for anybody in the Peloton next year, is we should actually set up a little bit of a gamified system with some segments that are on our route. So we could do like a categorized climb, a sprint finish line, a time trial, and then maybe like a more sort of like a group, like I don't know, maybe 10 kilometers of the first day right at the end would be actually a race. It would be controlled before that. And then you can race tactically at the end. For those that want to push it, that gives them the opportunity to do so if they still have energy in the legs. and the riding before that would be controlled group effort for the good of the group and not just me and Ty, trying to break up the chain a little bit because we pulled too hard for our time in
Actually,
the wind.
I like that idea. I love that idea. And I know Andrew's going to start some sprints, but he might just sit back and relax after. But that'll be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely won't be getting that green jersey. I'll tell you that right now. Maybe if I train a bit, maybe I could go for the polka dot, but that's about it. But
Polka dot for sure.
I don't think I can get that one either. Maybe runner up.
I have a hot take for this week. I wouldn't say it's super controversial, but it's more so just like what you should be doing in terms of progressing as you develop your cycling experience. And that is if you are comfortable going out for 30 kilometers on your own, and you can do that kind of in under an hour and a half, you are ready for a group ride. I hear from a bunch of people that, oh, like I can't ride with a group. I shouldn't be coming out yet. I'm not ready for that. But the fact of the matter is, cycling has such an efficiency game between the drafting and the coordination with other riders that if put your ego aside and say, I'm going to be happy just sitting in the draft of some stronger riders, you should be out riding with other people if you want to, because that social aspect of the sport is I think, the best part of cycling. And without it, cycling can become a little bit of a bore, but having other people surrounded in your circle of cycling experiences and that sort of thing makes the sport so much stickier for you as a rider, and you'll get more riding in because other people are asking you to go out riding. So that is my hot take, is you should not avoid a group ride because it's awesome.
10 out of 10 would recommend. Shout out to my buddy Kyle. He came out on a ride with us, right, Brian? His previous ride was I think 70K, and he bumped that right up to 100 plus 100K, and we helped him along the way. And he just said, you know what, we're gonna go for it. And then today again bumped it up another 40K. So he just keeps bumping her up, and he's with some friends, and it just gets people out, like you said. So that's a good hot take.
And I think if you're listening to this and want to start getting into group rides and want something to train towards, we're definitely going to be planning a BIM ride 2025. So we don't have details yet, routes or anything like that, but just put it in the back of your head. Just plant that seed because it will be a great time if it's anything like this year.
And grab a rope and hold on to the back, baby. We'll be going.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely bringing my fishing rod next year and just tying to the back of Ty's bike.
Yeah. And we talked about this last week, but there's some people that are getting into riding, which is super cool to see. I think we should shout out a few community members who we hope to have on that BIM ride next year and who for sure need to be joining some of the group rides. So, Pat D, you know who you are. I was talking to him last night. He said he's a friggin' boy in motion. We're trying to get him out on a group ride, and I hope to see him riding with us real soon and partaking in the Boys in Motion annual ride next year. And I mean, he's a strong guy. He's also really tall, and he'd be a nice draft to have. So that would be nice.
Exactly. That's what matters.
Who else do we have? I know there were some other people that we've been chatting with on Strava who are getting into the riding.
I'll do a couple Ottawa shoutouts. I need to get Kyle. He's been out on the group rides with me, but we got to get him onto the BIM ride. So I'm going to be hounding him for the next year to get on the group ride, and we'll get John and Charlie out there too, the Ottawa boys. So we'll get the big group out from Ottawa.
We got another message from Mike, another guy we went to high school with. Haven't ridden with him on one of our posts. He said that he was in for next year's BIM ride, so we look forward to it and hope maybe we can get on a few group rides before that too.
Yeah, and there's a few other people, won't go through the list of names, but you know who you are if you're listening. Reach out to myself, Ty if you're in Ottawa, Andrew in the GTA. We're more than happy to set up a group ride, set up a nice path to take, and hit some coffee shops along the way. Our doors are open. You can hit us in our DMs on Instagram, reach out to either of the three of us on Strava or anywhere else that you have our contact info. We're open to ride together, that's for sure.
Love it. Just fires me up. That it's that time of year. Nothing better than waking up almost crack of dawn and just going out there on the two wheel express. It's great.
All right. Anything else before we wrap this one up?
race week for me. It's going to be a just above Olympic distance triathlon, so I'm going to be racing that with my friends Charlie and John and some of the family will all be up there. So for all of us, so that'll be fun weekend next weekend.
And
Yeah, next Sunday, 7 days.
okay, let's talk about it a little bit. Do you have a time goal? Like what? Why are you doing this race?
Doing this race. It's a tune-up race for September, the full Ironman. So we're going out, you practice going through the motions, going through transitions, and just trying to go fast, to be honest, because it's going to be a nice kind of like when we do the tune-up race before the marathon. You do the half, right? So this is kind of a replica of that. You just do just a bit lower. Well, we're doing it just a bit under half the distance and try to push the body a little bit, see how it's going to do.
So what would a successful race for you mean next weekend?
I'm looking at 3:33. I like that number. Nice. It has a good ring to it. 3 hours and 33 minutes. That's what I'm looking for. That'll give me a good spot, I think, in the general, the general finishing time of the whole local triathlon in Kingston, and sure maybe top five or 10 in the age group. So that'll be nice. Maybe even top three. We'll see.
That's exciting. And have you worked a little on your optimization for those transitions? Do you have your plan?
Race day, baby. I'm gonna, what I think I'm gonna do is visualize. I'm gonna visualize my transitions and just, what is it called? Meditate and visualize those transitions. I'm gonna take my wetsuit off, put my bike helmet on. That's all I'm gonna do. No, no other way.
They're not 20 minutes in transition this time.
Oh
That's
no.
not the plan.
Tri suit. We're going 4 minutes. 4 minutes per.
Love it.
Wow,
That's
you heard
the
it here.
that is speedy.
Tune in next week for that. We'll see if
So
I could hit it. 3:33. You guys are going over or under?
Can you put it into context? What is the split of the three?
Okay,
Just so I have an idea.
it's 2K swim, 55K bike, 15K run. I'm thinking, what was it? I should have popped it up. I'm thinking, what is it? Maybe 38-minute swim, an hour and what is it? An hour, just under an hour and a half bike, an hour 15 run, an hour 12 run. I want to do 5 minutes per K on the run. It's gonna be nice.
I'll take the under. You're a man of speed.
You like the under. I know you.
I've got
Yo,
confidence in you. I would also go for the under, but that all hinges on your success in those transitions. You gotta be speedy.
That's true. I did not think of the transitions. You're right. So yeah, I got to be speedy in transitions, and I think if I get a good tailwind, you never know what's gonna happen.
Is Juicy J going down to the races with you?
I think so. It's gonna be a last minute audible with the schedule on her end, but yeah, I'm hoping she will.
Okay, if she does, please have her record your transitions because I would love to see how you are during those transitions.
How cracked I am. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
I gotta sunscreen it up too.
Switching gears because we haven't talked about this yet. Just this last week was my biggest week of running ever, which all stemmed from the challenge that we did. So I ended up completing the 93K for the 93 followers we gained across our platforms at the Boys in Motion. So we ended up doing, what was it? YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Spotify. We had 93 accounts follow us across all of those during like a 2 or 3 day period 2 weeks ago. And however many accounts followed us, I had to run that many kilometers. And I can tell you, it was difficult, but much easier than I thought it would be. I think part of that is I didn't have much fatigue from running going into the week, and the biking fatigue really didn't affect the runs. And I would have called it kind of my most successful week of running. There was no pain, no issues, and it was a lot of fun. What I'm looking forward to, though, is when we end up challenging either of you, because I'm excited to throw you guys under the bus and get you moving hard.
do you have evil ideas brewing, or it sounds like you have things that you want to subject us to already?
Let me just say the tea is steeping right now, but those challenges are around the corner. But I think it's too premature to kind of do a back-to-back challenge. But whoever it is, Andrew or Ty, one of you, the steamroller's coming in.
I think you got people in your ear, someone in your house there talking to you.
Oh yeah, we got all the marketers ready to attack.
But how do the legs feel? Like today, right now, how do the legs feel? 93K in them off of 360 bike week the week before.
Honestly, like a lot of the running was zone two. I felt good enough on Saturday, so the second to last day, to actually push and not do zone two for about half my run. I ended up doing a progression down to like 30K pace, so faster than my full, but not as fast as my half pace. And the legs were feeling good. They were a little bit jello on Saturday night because I did that push, but early in the week I managed the mileage well. This weekend, it wasn't too taxing. I ended up having about 35K to do Saturday and Sunday, so I managed it well early on and was able to cruise through the mileage. I think there's a 100-kilometer week coming up in my calendar real soon, maybe in preparation for the BIM 5K on October 5th. That might be, I might try to do and squeeze in a 100-kilometer week in my training for that.
So I think you just slipped it. But speaking of running and training, we're going to be hosting a BIM 5K on October 5th. So mark it in your calendars. We'll have more details and we'll be posting it on boysinmotion.com. But mark it in your calendars if running a 5K with the Boys in Motion is something that would interest you.
Sign me up. I'll
And
be pretty jello, but I'm in.
yeah, exactly. The legs will be jello, but the biggest thing is it's an event for everybody. For many people that I'm talking to, this will be their first 5K ever. And the nice thing about it is there's no barriers to entry. You can run at whatever pace you want, and you're going to finish with everybody because it's a super awesome setup. It essentially, you start at a varied time, and we try to make sure that everybody ends together, which is such a revolutionary idea. And it's super fun to run and race that way. And there will be people who are running 40-minute 5Ks all the way to like 16-minute 5Ks. So really anybody can join. And the last great selling point is it's free 99. So there's no
Much?
fees. It's free 99.
Love it. I'm excited to see who you recruited to run a 16-minute 5K. That's what I'm on the edge of my seat for.
Oh, don't you worry. I got some people who are going to outcompete you this year.
I'm super excited. My only goal for the BIM 5K is to finally pass Mark before the finish line. If I do that, I'm successful. If
Oh,
not, it's a
you're
failure.
dreaming.
Oh
You're
yeah, big,
dreaming. This guy
yeah,
has so much cycling fitness that he's just gonna blast this run.
He
yeah.
doesn't
It's
want you to know his next move. That's what's the problem.
it's on my bucket list. I'll get to it one day. Probably not this year, but one year.
Yeah, so that's fantastic. I think that's a great way to wrap up the show today. We covered everything you needed to know about group rides, being safe, communicating with others, but of course, the joy of riding bikes with your friends. We did a little bit of an extra wrap up of the Boys in Motion annual bike ride, and we teased the big BIM 5K that's happening October 5th. Details are to come. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, on TikTok, YouTube, and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, because there will be more noise coming out about this 5K, and of course, weekly content coming out on the pod. So, super excited to have you on this journey. Hopefully, we see you out there getting after it, getting that fitness, because we are.
Boys in motion.
Out.